Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the C+B Community Talks in partnership with Heritage Months, Autism and Neurodiversity Acceptance Month, spreading awareness, promoting acceptance. And I'm just going to pull something up here. As a reminder, closed captions are available by clicking the bottom button on the right of the Zoom controls. And we are excited to hear from our panelists, but first we'd like to open up with a land acknowledgement, particularly in light of recent events at DU. So before we begin, I want to take a moment in the spirit of healing and peace to acknowledge and honor the Indigenous peoples of the land upon which University of Denver stands, the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes. Like the history of so many institutions in the American West, ours is complex and sometimes painful. In recognition of this fact and to underscore our commitment to inclusion and equity, we commit to listen to and affirm the stories of all in our community. We invite you to visit the DU's Native American and Indigenous Initiatives website to learn more. www.du.edu/equity/indigenous-initiatives. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to China, our moderator for this panel. And I welcome all participants to submit their questions in the Q&A, and we will answer questions in the last 15 minutes of the event.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by just introducing the panelists we have with us today. So we have Alex Welch, who is a sophomore undergraduate student here at the University of Denver from Naperville, Illinois. Alex is autistic. Their hobbies include going for walks or bike rides in the summer, writing, playing video games, and sometimes watching TV and movies. My name is China Swigert. I'm a senior undergraduate student here at the University of Denver studying psychology with minors in English and criminology. I am president of the Neurodiversity Resource Group here at the University of Denver. I work as a peer educator with the Department of Health and Promotion, and I am working with the Office of Teaching and Learning in a student-faculty partnership program. And lastly, we have Jesse Ruderman, an executive functioning coach at the Learning Effectiveness Program at University of Denver. Jesse Ruderman supports Learning Effectiveness Program students with the development of executive functioning skills vital to academic success at the University of Denver. Previously, Jesse was the director of College Living Experience Denver, where he led a specialized staff in support of neurodiverse learners with their independent living, social skills development, and academic or career trajectories. Jesse was also a professor of English at Metropolitan State University of Denver. Thank you everyone for being here today. We're just going to get started with our questions for today. So I want to ask everyone, what have your most memorable experience been, positive or negative, relating to your neurodiversity here at the University of Denver? And we can start with Jesse, if that's okay.
Sure, wonderful. China, thank you so much for moderating. Cassie, thanks for organizing, facilitating. Alex, thanks for being a part of the panel. This is so wonderful. You know, this kind of culmination of voices, of peer voices, I think is one of the things that's just to be celebrated and that I see regularly here at DU, specifically through the LEP, are opportunities for peers to give back and to lead by doing. And so through different opportunities, students in the LEP are getting involved. And one of the best ways to keep them involved is to kind of see their peers thriving. And so when I see you here, China, facilitating this panel, and Alex, when I see you on this screen, you're giving back to those that are coming up. And that's one of the things that needs to happen in order for there to be more awareness and more support, and it'll continue to grow. So I guess I just want to start there by thanking you and recognizing how wonderful it is that our peers are giving back to this community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for those kind words.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to say anything more about your experiences here with neurodiversity at the University of Denver?
Sure. Yeah. I think what's so wonderful is that whereas maybe 10, 12 years ago, there was a lot more explaining to do when you used a term like neurodiverse. I have found the DU community to be aware and familiar, and I think that's a wave that has been coming for a long time and is still moving through academia. But I'm very proud of DU for how aware we are of neurodiversity. Is there room to grow? Certainly. But 12 years ago, were we as familiar? Not necessarily. I used to have to spend a lot more time talking about what a learning difference is and how it presents so differently from one learner to another. And it seems like some of those conversations have gotten brief, which is good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree that that has been some of my experience as well. And to just piggyback off of that, I think one of my best experiences here at DU with neurodiversity was last year when the then director of LEP, Scott Van Loo, and another employee there, Sarah Mooney, reached out to me about the Neurodiversity Resource Group, which was a club they were starting about neurodiversity specifically. And it's now a club that I run and I've been honored to run for the last year and a half almost. And it was just so great having this validation, this coming together of members of our community, and this opportunity to really help shape what that was going to look like. And it was just such a great opportunity to work with Scott, who was amazing and passionate and really, gave Alex and I the opportunity last year to participate in the Diversity Summit and speaking there about neurodiversity and really sharing out some more information with our community. So I think that is one of the greatest experiences I've had here in my time at DU. Alex, what about you? What's one of your experiences, positive or negative, that you've had around neurodiversity here at the University of Denver?
It's hard to think of a lot of specific ones, but one that really stands out is the whole club. I've had a great opportunity to make my voice heard, have a lot of peers who relate to my struggles and also understand their struggles too, not just ones similar to me, but are neurodiverse in other ways, like dyslexia, ADHD, and that kind of thing. So it's not only increased the understanding of myself, but others around me, and I think it's a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, fantastic. So next up, I just want to ask, what have your experiences been of community awareness around neurodiversity? And I think, Jesse, you already touched a little bit upon what yours have been like. Is there anything else you want to add to what you've already articulated beautifully?
Well, sure. Just one other kind of component. I also see there is a desire to learn and grow. So we've had the opportunity here at the LEP to partner with a few other departments, including advising or DSP. And what's so important is that the faculty has a desire to learn. And a simple question that I was asked just during kind of a meeting of the minds between advising and LEP is just kind of how can we as advisors let those from the LEP know that we are aware, that we understand, that we empathize and we're here to support them just like we are any other students. And I thought that was such a great question because I think more faculty, more professors want to communicate and the way we communicate this is, I think, the crux of the question. that we're aware, that you're welcome, that I'm here to support you, and that I'm willing to adapt a little bit to make sure you're getting the support that you need. I'm seeing that from a lot more staff, and a desire to kind of make sure that we're seeing all learners as unique, and we're giving them the support that they need. And how can I give them that signal? I don't know. I think, Alex, this would be a great question to kind of turn to you. One of the things that I love to do in China, and this is just something I've been doing for a long time with all of my students, is just kind of like a, eye contact. I see you. If you're available for a fist bump, that means I've got your back and you've got this. And I think we need a little bit more of that on campus. When we're meeting someone new, if advisors could just kind of bridge that gap with just a little bit of a personal touch, I think we could get to business so much faster.
All right, so as I've said, I had a lot of great experiences with my professors. Most of them have been at least really good at reaching out. Some of them have been fantastic. I always made sure to reach out to them, and most are really good at responding to emails. So that's worked out pretty well for me. A lot of people are aware of what autism is, and they understand why I need extended time on tests. So my experiences have been largely good. It's a little more of a mixed bag for some of my friends that I've talked to. Sometimes they've had professors that don't understand and their need for accommodation and that kind of thing. Some of them aren't responsive to emails. So just because my experience is really good doesn't mean others are. And I think a lot of people need to be aware of that.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I'm Jessie. Yeah, I think you both bring up some really important points. And I would really agree, Jessie, that I've seen a lot of support and momentum, especially in the staff and with some of the faculty of this movement lately of wanting to have the neurodiverse perspective and wanting to really acknowledge us and see how to help us. That's something I've seen a lot of, especially since taking up the helm of president for the Neurodiversity Resource Group. I've had the great honor of being a part of a lot of these conversations. Alex and myself just last night got to speak with Vice Chancellor Adams, Dr. Nikki Latino, who is our Dean of Students, and two members of the Office of Teaching and Learning, all came into our NRG meeting and spoke with us and really listened about student experience and what it is that we feel like we need and if we feel like we're supported here at the University of Denver. And it has been such an honor to be able to be a part of these conversations and to be able to take a lead in making these conversations happen. And I think that is something really great that I'm seeing is that, they come into the Joint Council and I have the opportunity to tell them like, hey, I want to talk more, come to our meetings, come listen to my students, let them tell you what their experiences have been. And so I think it's a great opportunity that I've had and that a lot of our students have now that we have formed the Neurodiversity Resource Group, is that it's an affinity club. And through that, we get to be a part of Joint Council and we get to join in on so many conversations with leaders around the campus who are trying to make sure that we have a campus that is inclusive and open and welcoming to our students with all sorts of diversities. So I definitely think there that I've seen a lot of growth around campus and a lot of willingness to, make us a part of the conversation and really try and spread that support and welcoming environment around the campus.
Yeah, Anna, thank you for that work that you're doing and the energy that you're putting into it and to, being that advocate, that liaison, that voice that's representing something so important. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be able to, have been elected this voice for so many people. And I really do consider it an honor to be able to do this work and to be able to help further this around campus. And I love just getting to see these changes that we're talking about, especially like I'm saying with staff and administration. I feel like it's been a really salient experience. But to speak to Alex's point, I do also think that there are definitely some disconnects with faculty members, especially where you do have some fantastic faculty members. I have had great professors who have really worked with me, who have listened, who have been open to my experiences, to hearing how I learned, helping support me in their classrooms. But there are also those professors who really aren't, who maybe don't understand neurodiversity, who ask if you really need this accommodation, or ask how this disorder means you need this accommodation. I know just far too many students who feel like every time they go into a new classroom, they have to explain their entire diagnosis sheet, just to be able to feel like the professor is going to hear them and be open to providing accommodations that they've already justified with DSP. And so if there's one thing that I would really encourage around campus is just a little more communication, maybe between the faculty and DSP about what the DSP process looks like, just to let the faculty know that we have already jumped through the hoops and the loops and everything to be able to get our accommodations. So this kind of re-vetting and verifying in class can be a lot for our students who've already gone through quite a bit to be registered with DSP. So I definitely think there's great forward momentum happening on campus, and I'm so honored to be a part of that. But I really hope that this is only the beginning and we can see even more happening, and especially helping to grow our faculty members and helping make sure that it's not just the broader DU community that's welcoming, but also the individual classrooms that our students are stepping into on a daily basis.
Yes, so important. And I'll, if I may, just say one more thing to piggyback on accommodations. And I think one of the things that Alex is pointing to is that, you know, some professors don't really understand that an accommodation is very different than a modification. And neurodiverse students, those with accommodations, are not asking for any of the course to be modified. We're simply looking to make sure that because of, like you said, China, well-documented information about how we learn in the space that we learn best in those environments, that these accommodations would help us to succeed in this class. And so it's very much about fair isn't necessarily everyone getting the same thing, but getting what they need to be successful.
Absolutely, that's beautifully said. So I guess we will move on to our next question here for you all. What are some of the most common stigmas or assumptions you have encountered with the DU community? And what do you wish these people knew more? So we'll kick it off with you again, Jesse.
Yeah, so I think that's a stigma, number one, that accommodations are modifications. You know, I think there's also some stigmas within the community that asking for an accommodation is, you know, asking for an advantage. You know, I work a lot with students who perhaps have put things like accommodations into place, but then never submit them to their professors because they don't want to be seen as different, right? Or treated as different. And so we talk about disclosure and what it entails. And I think there's a big stigma associated with disclosure, as if it's negative, when, gosh, I'm really of the mindset that if we can be forthright and honest with those that we're going to be working with, we can get the accommodations that we need, the support that we need. Certainly I recognize that it's scary when you're sharing information with someone. Ultimately, when we have a relationship, we want to have a trustful relationship. And if we can share and feel like we're in an environment where we can share information that will help us benefit, then gosh, disclosing is sometimes the best thing that we can do. And that's kind of in an academic setting. And I've also worked with a lot of students that have pursued careers. And it's been those employers that have empathized with a student who has disclosed that they have a specific accommodations, that have gotten jobs and have really been made to feel comfortable in those positions. And so I am an advocate for disclosure, and I recognize there is a stigma around it.
Yeah, Absolutely. I think beautifully said once more, and I absolutely can connect to everything you've said there. It's definitely, I believe it's best policy to disclose, and that's definitely how I go about my classes. But let me just tell you that first week of class is terrifying.
Yeah.
Going up to these complete strangers who you've never met before, who are going to be controlling your fate for the next 10 weeks, and saying, "Hi, my name is China, and my diagnoses are chronic migraines. I might be missing your class. I might need extra time on assignments." And it can feel like you're getting off on a really weird foot. Like, you want to make this great impression. You want them to like you. You want them to, know you for the work that you're going to produce in their class. And most of the time, they've seen nothing from you yet. And you're starting off with, "I have accommodations for extra absences. I have accommodations for extra time on assignments. I have accommodations for a note taker." Like, it's a really weird place to start.
Yep.
And I think it's definitely, it's a unique challenge for our neurodiverse students that, not many neurotypical students probably think about the fact that we don't start off with the same clean slate or the same, "I'm going to get judged on my first exam, my first paper, my first homework assignment." No, we're going to start off on, "These are my diagnoses, these are my accommodations." And then it can feel in ways like then you have to prove yourself, prove that even though I have these diagnoses, I'm a great student. Where it doesn't mean you're not a great student to have them, but it can feel like that's where your starting point is.
So important what you just said, China. I hope a lot of professors here at GU kind of just watch that, because I think so many of them kind of are in that moment and they're getting to know, a brand new classroom full of students, and there's a lot going on in that first week of class, and they want to be supportive. They really do. They want their students to succeed. By and large, every professor I know cares for students and wants them to succeed. And I think that, that conversation that takes place is really tricky. And I think what you said, just in terms of what it feels like from your lens, is so important that professors recognize that it's scary. And then hard, and then you feel like you have to kind of keep working to prove yourself. Really impressive and challenging, and we have a ways to go there too.
Absolutely, yeah. Alex, would you like to speak a little about some of the stigmas or assumptions that you have encountered?
So as I've said, my experiences have largely been really good, and I've been great about advocating for myself, but not every student has that skill. And one thing I've heard thrown around is we can't help you if you talk to us, which is fair, but at the same time, there's a big issue with this because not every student might be comfortable with talking to their professors for the reasons you've outlined. And also they might not be able to explain the reasons for having that accommodation as well. Speaking versus on email, they might be better. So there's that too. And again, just because some students can do it doesn't mean everyone else can. And Shina was talking about how yesterday we were talking to people from LAP, explain the positive, negative experiences and how we could improve things at LAP and DSP. And one of the things that one of my friends brought up was universal learning design, which basically it's a set of principles for a curriculum that will appeal to multiple different learning styles, different disabilities, these other things. So basically, it's not just going to be a one-size-fits-all scenario, and that's essential for everyone, really.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, and I think you bring up a great piece around advocacy. And this is something that I would just like to talk about for just a second, is that so many of our neurodiverse students, myself most certainly included, get told all the time, "You are such a great self-advocate. You have such great self-advocacy skills." And that sounds really positive in the moment, I'm sure. But what you're really telling our students is, wow, you have had to stand up for yourself so many times. Wow, you have to fight so hard just to get your needs met in classrooms on this campus. And I'm not saying that there is no place for skills in self-advocacy. They are certainly great skills to have, to develop. What I am saying is that our students' ability to learn, to succeed in their classrooms, to have their needs met should not depend on their self-advocacy skills, how good or bad they are at them. Especially, we have freshmen coming in who are brand new to college life, brand new to the campus, brand new to this entirely new system of disability accommodations, which functions in a completely different way from IEPs in high school. And as they're adjusting to all of this, we are then asking them to also become, just in an instant, these amazing self-advocates who can go up to all of their professors, be able to navigate the conversations that I've just outlined about, here are my diagnoses, and this is what I'm going to need in your classroom. And here, let me also tell you something that makes you think that I'm worthy of being in your classroom, despite the fact that I'm coming at you day one with all of these accommodations. And also, just let me advocate for myself and maybe explain my disability to you if you haven't heard of it before, or explain how my disability means this, I need this accommodation, or even I've run into several times, let me explain what this accommodation is, because professors have never even heard of it before. And so self-advocacy is such a topic for me, because it's complementing skills that are born out of a need, that are born out of a place of not having needs met, of not, getting the supports we need, of having to do things for ourselves that should really be built into university structures and assistances outside of ourselves. Because at this point, you are really just putting extra work, extra burden on the neurodiverse students because they're neurodiverse. If I were a neurotypical student, I would not need to have the same self-advocacy skills that I have developed. There's no way. And again, are they good skills to have? Absolutely. But are they skills that I should have to have in order to be able to succeed at DU? I don't think so. And so I really hope that our university can get to a point where it is not required that a student have such amazing self-advocacy skills just in order to have their needs met in their classrooms.
Gosh, Shauna, thanks for saying it. I couldn't agree with you more, and I am probably guilty of even saying to a student what a tremendous self-advocate they are. So thank you for the wake-up call and helping me understand your plight, that to be such a good self-advocate comes not necessarily from fun. It comes from having to advocate for what's fair for a long time.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for, being open to hearing that. I know it's one of those things that people say well-intentioned, but that when you're on the receiving end, it has a lot of weight to it that people don't really see necessarily when they're saying it. But yeah, so speaking a little bit more to some of the common stigmas or assumptions that I've seen here in the DU community, and I think a lot of mine come with my specific disability. So I have chronic migraines that really mess with my ability to see. My vision gets impaired, things get kind of all mixed up, reading becomes difficult. And when I say I have chronic migraines, these are not the things that professors think of. There are a lot of assumptions that I get met with about, oh, well, then you need to look at screens less. Why do you have a computer to take notes on? Or how does that mean that you're going to misspell words on your exams? That's not related to migraines. And that goes back to a lot of what I said about having to explain my diagnoses every quarter, because it's not just a matter of this is my accommodation. It's a matter of this is my accommodation and I have it because I have this, and then this is what this disorder is because you don't know that this is what this disorder can look like. And again, just having to explain even what some accommodations are. I have run into a lot of professors who have never heard of the extra absences accommodation. Just a lot of people who are not familiar with it, which is going back into that wonderful self-advocacy piece, means that every quarter I am explaining this accommodation to professors and walking them through the paperwork for it and having to let them know why this exists. And it's one of those things that gets so tiring. And I just wish that there was some way that our professors could have training on the accommodations that exist, so that as a student, again, I'm not put in the position of having to walk professors through this every single quarter. Especially with some of my accommodations, there are actual paperwork forms that have to be filled out. And I've often had to make 15 half an hour appointments with my professors to walk them through step by step this paperwork. And it's just, yes, it is my accommodation, it is what I need, but does that necessarily mean that I should have this extra time burden put upon me that isn't put on our neurotypical students? Or does it mean that just because I have this accommodation, I should have to spend 30 minutes walking a professor through it, while with other accommodations, you do it all on Accommodate, and there's no need for students to go in person and have to explain what this is and where do I sign and what do I put in this box. And so I think,
which kind of goes back to why a lot of students don't disclose at all.
Yeah, because sometimes the things that are there to help us just feel like another hurdle to cross, because they're just adding to our to-do list. And even more so when you have professors who maybe don't want to follow through on accommodations. I know students who have the note-taking accommodation who have learned how to make do with their own notes because so many professors don't think they need it, or don't get someone to volunteer to take notes in class, so they just leave our students without a note taker until week 7. And I really think there need to be better institutions in place to make sure that our students are having their accommodations heard and met.
Hear, hear. Well said, Jenna.
Thank you. Okay, one more question for y'all before we move into our Q&A portion. What spaces, people, or strategies have you found to be the most helpful to you in navigating the DU community as a neurodiverse individual? I'll just pass it on to you first again, Jesse.
Oh my gosh, I think we should let Alex start with this question. I think this is much more designed for his lens.
All right. So I've already said this in one of the earlier questions, but energy has been a great space for me for understanding neurodiversity, myself, the other facets of it, just having people to talk to understand some of my experiences and being able to understand theirs. I'd also like to give credit to my academic counselor. She's done a great job at helping me through my hardships, registering for classes, and she's just a great person to be around. So yeah.
That's so cool to hear. Thanks for saying that, Alex. I believe your counselor's even listening too. So I'll just reiterate that some of the things that I see happening here up on the 4th floor of Rafado here, where the LEP is housed, from first year students that are just kind of getting their footing and building relationships with their counselors to, a second year, third year student kind of really finding that they can be a peer leader. There was a celebration just the other day around the corner from me, a student that's made it all the way to graduation this May, that has been utilizing the LEP for not as heavily, but since their first year, come back to see their academic counselor to show them how, their guidance really helped them get to this point in their life. And gosh, that's what makes it all worthwhile. So Alex, you're well on your way. China, you too, obviously.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I really want to highlight LEP definitely is one of my favorite places as a neurodiverse student. I've been there since my first quarter here at DU, and this is now my last quarter here at DU. So it has been a pleasure the entire time. I've had so much support, and I've been lucky almost that whole time, since about maybe midway through my first quarter. I've had my academic advisor, Carol Erickson, and I do not know how I would have gotten through any of my 4 years without her. She has been such an amazing support and such an amazing advocate. She really helps me to have a partner in some of this self-advocacy and to really have someone else who's on my side and helping me with any problems that I come across. So I really want to thank her, and I'm just so honored that I've been able to go through this journey with her. And I also want to echo what Alex said. NRG has been such a great space to inhabit. I've been honored to be able to be at the helm of that club from its beginning and to get to see how it has grown and helped shape that growth. And it's so great to be able to have a space to go with other students who understand, to be able to, come together in works of advocacy, but also to be able to just have someone who can listen and actually know what I mean, who's also been there, who can provide not only encouragement, but maybe some commiseration, because sometimes you need to feel what you're going through. So it's been really great to have that space. And as I said, I'm so enjoying being able to be a part of the Joint Council and the work that I've done with Vice Chancellor Adams and Dr. Nikki Latino to really further neurodiverse issues around the campus, and really hoping that that will produce a better environment for the students to come. But absolutely, if I had to narrow it down to just one person, Carol Erickson has been my savior here at DU, and I am not sure what I would have done without her. Oh, fantastic. Thank you all for all of your very thoughtful reflections and answers thus far. I think we've had such a great conversation. At this point, I want to open it up to any questions that people have that we would like to pose for any of our panelists.
Alex, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear your lens on, how anyone here at DU could be, proactively more aware and more accepting. Just through your lens, is there any way that anyone could kind of demonstrate that to you? Could you share us what that would look like?
Sure. So one of the big things I'd like to emphasize is how all neurodiverse individuals are not the same. They're actually quite varied. And even if they're neurodiverse in the same way, for example, being autistic, as individuals, we could have very different needs. You could have different strengths and weaknesses. Some could have comorbidities alongside autism. And one of the biggest ways to recognize that is to listen to individuals' experiences and acknowledge them. And another important part of that is bridging the gap in communications. Another thing I brought up earlier was how some students, like myself, communicate better through writing than through speaking, and some people are the total opposite. So bridging the gap in communication, like providing multiple ways to communicate in the first place, be it meeting with a professor on Zoom, in person, or emailing, or a combination of them, all that is really important, and it'll take into account the different learning styles of all individuals, not just neurodiverse. So
important. Thank you so much for sharing that, Alex.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like we have a question in the chat. I'd love to know more about support for neurodiverse students with student jobs and jobs after graduation. So I'll kick this one off, and then I would love to also hear from you, Alex. So I think a lot of support in jobs looks pretty similar to support in the classrooms of finding out, what accommodations might be necessary for the student and finding ways to implement those in the workplace as you would in a classroom. I absolutely believe that that is a possibility, and ways to just make things comfortable and accessible for our students, whether that be in student job positions or in positions out in the real world. I think it's really important for employers to be able to recognize employee needs, but also I think there's a lot of reflection needed on the employee's part to be able to know what you need. If you don't know what your needs are, then it's not really possible for your employer to meet them. So it's really important to have that kind of self-reflection piece so that you can work together to see what best practices in that particular job is going to look like. Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add to this question?
I can't really think of anything specific. I haven't had a job yet, but one thing I will say is that all jobs are different. There's no one size fits all approach, but some of the most important things to do that could apply to all jobs are really what we've been talking about this whole time, listening to experiences of neurodiverse individuals, recognizing that if they're a really good self-advocate, they've been doing that because they've had to and not because they wanted to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. In my experience, I have seen many neurodiverse individuals find jobs and thrive in those jobs and become very valued employees. I feel there's more and more hiring entities that are going to be looking for neurodiverse individuals, because we need to shift some paradigms in terms of the way thinking is done and what work looks like and who does that work. And there are more and more entities that are kind of catching up to that speed that, gosh, this isn't necessarily a population that needs accommodations. This is a population that can really help a business go to great new heights, right? So it's again, it's just kind of an understanding that we all bring something really valuable, and if given the opportunity, we can all thrive.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and while we're waiting on another question, I'll just take one more second here to say, I know an individual who has ADHD and was working in an office setting, set up in cubicles. And, we talk a lot about what accommodations are, that we're going to need accommodations, that there might be a need for accommodations, but looking at what accommodations can actually mean, the accommodation this individual needed was just where their kubi was located. Because if they were located in one specific spot, like in the middle of the office, then they got too distracted by all the other people, got into a bunch of side conversations. But if they were, off on the end, they were perfectly fine, did their work. So, I think when we say accommodations, people might have this inflated idea of it's going to be this big request, where it can really just be as simple as, I need the desk on the end. And so I think it's really important that we have these discussions about what accommodations people are actually using to avoid this like inflated idea that we're asking for these ridiculous things in order to function, when it's really just simple little fixes that help us be able to be an active participant in our school environments, in our work environments, in our lives. So thank you for that question, and thank you everyone for your answers.
Yeah, can I plug one website real fast? It's really neat. There is this entity called divergent.com, which is an entity that's looking for neurodiverse, disabled employees. So wonderful resource.
Fantastic.
Divergent.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Do we have another question? Anyone? Okay. Well then, let me pose a question to both of you. I have so loved being on the panel with you today and getting to hear your voices. And I would love to know what inspired you to join in on this panel today. Yeah.
You first, Alex.
Okay, so as Shina mentioned earlier, I did a panel similar to this for the diversity back last year, and it went really well for me. And even though I've said that self-advocacy is often done out of necessity, it's also something I feel really passionate about and enjoy. So having a chance to do that more is something I view as really important. So I decided to take this opportunity.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, this is all full circle for me. I struggled with pretty severe dyslexia and a speech impediment when I was younger, and needed a little bit of help kind of getting to where I am today. But I didn't let like dyslexia or even today, some really weird spelling snafus keep me from pursuing master's degrees and becoming an English professor. And I really recognize now that, it was because people kind of slowed down just a moment to listen and to see how I could still learn the materials. I just needed to kind of shift the way I'm going about learning them. That comes all the way full circle to my position now, and my role is kind of being a liaison and advocating for students here at DU. And I recognize that there are professors, hopefully listening, that would also kind of benefit from that same just understanding. That's why I wanted to be a part of this panel today.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think I share a little bit in what Alex was saying about advocacy work. And, I've shared, I feel like self-advocacy can be a burden at times. And I think that's why I find it so important to engage not only in self-advocacy, but in community advocacy, especially now in my senior year. I am wanting to leave a better DU for all the students that are going to come, for all the students that I currently know that I help serve through energy. I really want to do anything I can to make it easier for them to be able to navigate campus. And so it's so important to me to be able to take these opportunities to share the student perspective and to be able to further an understanding on campus of what it is that neurodiverse students are bringing to the table and what it is that we're asking for. So I was honored to be able to have this opportunity to speak here today. As Alex said, we got to participate on a panel last year that was fantastic, and I was so happy to be able to share my voice then. And I believe the point that I ended that panel on that I would like to bring back once again today is that neurodiverse students don't ask for special treatment. We ask for a little bit of grace and a little bit of humanity. And to explain, we just want people to understand, like Jesse was saying, that we might need a little bit more time. We might need people to slow down a little, but we are no less capable. We have no less to offer. In fact, we have possibly even more to offer because we have been through so many additional experiences in order to get where we are today. And we just want the chance to be at the table. To have the small little accommodations like the cubicle on the end that are going to help us be able to be here, to show up and to show out with our experiences, our voices, and just to be able to be a part of this wonderful community here at DU. So thank you to everyone who came live to today's presentation and everyone who is watching it after the fact for helping show up at the table, helping us be here at the table by listening to our voices, helping boost our experiences, and taking a moment to try and learn what it's like to be in our shoes. I hope that what we've said here today has been helpful and that it can help further what is already happening here on campus, just this beautiful coming to terms with neurodiversity and uplifting of our neurodiverse voices and making a campus that is truly going to be inclusive and hopefully one day does not require us to be great self-advocates. So thank you so much, Jesse and Alex, for all of your contributions. It has been an honor to be able to speak with you today.
Yes, thank you too, China. Very well done.
Thank you all, Jesse, China, and Alex. I really appreciate you being here and helping everyone in the community understand this more. So that's what it's all about. I'll go ahead and share some like our website for celebrating Heritage Months and C+V, and we'd love for you guys to come to more events. And thank you very much, everyone who participated and everyone who is here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie.